order, and tonight we start with the tax rate hearing.
Mr. Norris.
Thank you all for the opportunity to speak this evening. I'm presenting the tax rate hearing information for our 23-24 year. This is our 24 calendar year tax rate. We are in a reassessment year, so we're going to have a little bit more excitement this year than what we may have had in last year. So, each year is part of our process. Just to explain, our voters approve our tax rate ceiling, and then we're held by the amount that we can increase revenues by the Hancock Amendment and set by our ceilings that are set by the Hancock Amendment and by the Consumer Price Index. The Missouri State Auditor's Office is part of our process where they review and approve our levies as they're presented. We have already gone through that process as part of our submission process. If for some reason the levy wasn't adopted tonight, we would go back through the submission process. The Board of Education is the final approval process of that levy. Each year, the way that assessed valuations are set by statute. The assessor's office performs an appraisal of properties and then applies factors set by statute on how those assessed valuations are passed on to the taxpayers, such as personal property at 33%, real property is set at residential at 19%, commercial at 32%, and we don't have agriculture. Our general obligation debt currently is set at 89 cents, which is reflective of the passage and 2020 of property. This is a continuation of the 89 cents that we've had in years past. We are in a reassessment here, so things that are impacting our tax rate is in odd numbered years we're in a reassessment. New construction can happen in any year. Our consumer price index this year is at 6.5%, but we're held to a 5% increase in revenue. Prop C rollback, so the amount that we receive through state taxes and Prop C, we have to return those dollars. So this portion of the rollback is a state mandate due to we do not have a Prop C rollback. Then we also have a recoupment, which is based upon protested taxes in previous years. As we'll see in the future slides, our current year protest for commercial property is 12 cents. Currently, you all may have heard of Senate Bill 190. Senate Bill 190 was passed and was signed into legislation by Governor Mike Parsons on July 6th. In summary, this process provides for a county government to be able to provide a credit to senior citizens above the age of Social Security eligibility. St. Louis County has not currently adopted this as of 9/19 or as the present date, but we want to make this make our school board aware of this. We don't necessarily have a positioning statement on this, and we're unaware of what the net impact would be due to our county governments do not have the data in order to provide an estimate of the impact to the local governments. Our school finance calendar, so big point items. In March, in a reassessment year, we issue our information for non-binding tax rates. So you receive tax rates as a community member that are preliminary. Many times there can be wild variances on the preliminary assessed valuation versus the final figures that are provided. In May, our preliminary budget is typically provided to our school board for first reading. In June, our budget is hopefully adopted by our school board of education. Final assessed valuation is typically received by the assessor's office in the third week of September. This year, that was not the case. Board of Equalization has not completed their reviews, and they do not intend on completing reviews before October. We're required to provide our levy to the assessor's office and the collector's and clerk's offices by October 1st. So the numbers we have right now as we're presenting will more than likely change during our final presentation as part of the December 31st final figures. We receive our funding This is really tiny print. The PDF is available for you all. This is a more detailed line item of what our calendars are. Through December and February, we'll receive the majority of our operating levies, and then those funds will be what we operate on for the remainder of the school year. Just to show a summary of our assessed valuations, our total assessed valuation grew by 13.4%. Residential grew by 13.7%, commercial by 15%, and personal property was relatively stagnant. This is assessed valuation over history. Compared to last year, total assessed valuation again increased by 13.4% or $51.7 million. Non-reassessment years, we can set rollbacks, but those rollbacks stick for 2 years. We're not recommending a rollback. We also have assessed valuations remain fixed. Changes in non-reassessment years are typically due to new construction or due to recoupments. So as part of the Board of Equalization process, people file protested taxes. As part of, if they disagree with the assessor's office, as part of that process in any year, retroactively, those protests can occur. And then the district is credited the amount that those protested taxes are returned to the taxpayer. During our process of reviewing closed cases, we received notice that the district was eligible to recoup $191,000, of which $178,000 is commercial. We're recommending a recoupment of the $178,000, which is consistent with how we have recouped taxes in years past. Our capital projects levy over the recent years has been 28 cents. We're recommending 25 cents. This is a rollback of funds that is in agreement with our long-term planning to pull dollars back into operations and continue to at least provide dollars to complete our capital project expectations. Debt service levy. Again, we're recommending 89 cents, which is the amount that was voter approved as part of our bond project to complete the McGrath and Mark Twain projects. This is our rate summaries. Now you'll notice that the rates are decreasing, but our revenues are increasing. The rates are decreasing because we are limited to our growth by the Hancock Amendment, which is 5%. We also get to capture amounts for new construction and recoupment amounts. Our residential rate is declining by 4.7%. Our commercial rate is declining by 10.5%. And our personal property rate is relatively unchanged, except for Prop C rollback. Our blended rate overall is reducing by 5.3%. Our total revenues. So our total revenues are increasing by 1.1 million, of which operations is 747,000 and debt service makes up 358,000. Historically, our collection rate has varied between 93 and 97%. As such, we are using 94% as our collection rate. Increased total revenue is 6.38%, which includes the amount collected for new construction and recoupment and the limitation by the Hancock Amendment. We are making recommendations to the Board of Education to approve the rates as set. These rates are set based upon the total allowable ceiling that our tax rate calculation permits. So this is the limitation of revenue growth for the Hancock Amendment. Residential rate, we are recommending approval of $4.07 per $100 of assessed valuation, of which 89 cents is toward debt service. A commercial rate of $5.03 per $100 of assessed valuation. Personal property rate of $4.90 per $100 of assessed valuation, and inclusive of a recoupment amount of 12 cents. We are recommending declining a residential recoupment. That residential recoupment, I believe, was a little less than 4 cents. We are also making recommendation of a blended rate. The blended rate is more for the purpose of reporting to Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. This isn't how we tax, but is a requirement that we calculate this for Department of Ed. Our incidental fund, which is operations, is recommended at $3.38 per $100 of assessed valuation. Debt service fund at 89 cents per $100 of assessed valuation. Capital projects fund at 25 cents per $100 of assessed valuation, or a total blended rate of $4.53. And are there any questions?
It's simple. The PDF that was attached to our document has different numbers than your slideshow, so I guess I'm wondering which one's right. Maybe it's not so simple.
That sounds like that I need to update the document that you received. We sent final figures on last week, during Wednesday, and then we updated only one line item in the slides as we thought they were presented. I can absolutely provide that PDF to everyone in the school board.
I'm just, so this slide shows the right one.
This slide is made up of the final figures.
Okay, that's all I needed to know.
Is just to that point though, just so the memo that when we go to actually vote on this, I want to make sure, so in that memo, the 2023 property tax rate, those are the correct ones?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And just a point of clarification, do you mind going back to the last, so this slide, so no, that one. So just in terms of, if we look at how the revenue comes in, if you now go to the revenue slide. So here, out of that 1.106, we're highlighting operating versus debt service. That operating though includes, if you go to the last one, would be both the
capital and general fund.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Just I want to call that out. So that capital and the incidental fund are covered in that, and this is where long-term, as we've said, our goal is to reduce the capital project fund rate so we leave more in operations.
Yes.
However, given the construction we have going on and our commitment to getting the schools finished, right now we are recommending we stay at that 0.25.
Yes.
Any other questions for Mr. Miller? Thank you for the
Appreciate
presentation.
all the work. I know it's
Yes,
well.
thank you.
Thank you very
I
much.
apologize. I'll get the PDF right.
All right, well, we are going to officially start our meeting now with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we are now in our scheduled time on our agenda for public comment. The Board of Education wishes to hear your thoughts and concerns. All speakers must have signed in with their address and contact information. Speakers may speak for up to 3 minutes, although the board may ask clarifying questions. Please be reminded that the board cannot respond directly to any questions or comments made this evening. The president shall have the authority to request that the superintendent ensure the appropriate staff member follow up with the individual regarding information or concern presented during public comment. And we have one person, Katie Spall, if you'd like to come up. Thank you.
So I'm feeling a little shy. I did just read the email that you guys are going to have an open forum in a couple weeks. I'd already rearranged my schedule, and I can't stay the whole time, but I just wanted to come to say that I'm really excited about this community forum, and I wanted to share a little bit of my history in the district because I moved here to be in the district for the schools, and I'm also transplant. I'm not from St. Louis, so I've had to tease apart a couple different cultures. The St. Louis private by tradition is a unique beast, but the seeds of doubt in the Brentwood school district started immediately in kindergarten. Like, where are you going to send your kids for high school? Right out the gates, it was. And there's just noise, there's peripheral noise and distrust. And I have been trying so hard to have a positive narrative and be upbeat because it's small community, and single people can change the narrative very strongly. And this just feels like a great opportunity. I would love to be a part of a solution. I would love to be engaged, and I realize I'm 2 weeks too early, but here I am. Thank you. Thank you. That's basically what I wanted to say, just that there's real need for cultural shift in our community. I'd like to be part of it.
Wonderful. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
very much. Thank you.
Okay, Kate, could we please have roll call?
Yes. Jamie Allen,
Here.
Ryan Dodson,
Here.
Brian Flynn,
Here.
Keith Ravenberg,
Here.
Keith Slauson,
Here.
Lindsey Spencer,
Here.
Terry Crossell.
Here. Thank you. If I could have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as outlined.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that is approved. That brings us to our superintendent's report.
All right, Matt, you're back up.
Sorry, I gotta grab a little bit of everything there. Looks like I've got a couple items up. So the first item we have is the tax rate. You have the tax rate presented in accordance with the tax rate hearing notice that we just presented. We are recommending a residential rate of 4.0735, a commercial rate of 5.0309, personal property rate of 4.9052, of which each rating is inclusive of a commercial recoupment, in the commercial line item, we're including the commercial recoupment of 12 cents, and each line includes a debt service amount of 89.9 cents per $100 in assessed valuation. Of this includes a blended rate and incidental fund, which is our general operating fund, of $3.38, debt service fund of 89 cents, and capital projects fund of 25 cents, or a total blended rate of 4.5337 per $100 of assessed valuation. Are there any questions?
So I don't know, the memo I have here, the 2023 tax rate hearing memo, yep, has different numbers in it. That was just attached. I just want to make sure we're very clear with what we're, the rest of you all see that? I'm looking at the memo with the motion on it.
There should have been revised taxes as part of the Wednesday presentation.
So just, because I want to be very clear, what I'm seeing and what I pulled up is the operating levy per subclass of property 2023. I have in this memo it's showing residential 3.1745.
3.1745 is operation, not including debt service.
Okay,
Commercial rate is 4.1319,
okay,
not including debt service.
Okay.
Personal property is 4.0062, not including debt service.
okay. So it is all right if we make the motion, what we're saying, I just want to be clear, that's the operating side, and then you make reference up above the debt service is the 0.8990 per 100.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I have updated that slide from compared to what we've done previously in our memo, so I apologize for the confusion.
That's all right, but just in terms of form, how should we approve it? Is it?
So each one of those rates is important to approve because we're really approving the commercial, residential, personal property, and debt service
Okay.
rates.
That's fine. That was my question.
If we could have a motion and
So I move that we approve the rates as outlined in the memo with specifically calling attention to the operating, residential operating is 3.1745, the commercial operating 4.1319, the personal property operating is 4.0062, and the debt service is 0.8990 per 100.
Second.
discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right, those tax rates are approved, Matt.
All right, budget amendment.
So as part of the June 20th meeting, we had presented a recommendation to reclassify budget dollars as presented. We have the summary and recap. This is not an action item. This is just reporting back as information item that we reclassified dollars and caused no increase to total revenues or total expenditures. Again, this is the summary and recap. As part of our ASBR, our annual secretary board report, we ended up with a 63.11% assessment of fund balance reserve over operating, which includes the general fund and the teachers fund. Are there any questions with the budget adjustment?
That's great, thank you.
Right, adult meal pricing.
So as part of our annual processes, we typically perform a price meal equity tool for our students. We are preparing for an audit for our food nutrition services. As part of our pre-audit process, it came to our attention that we needed to do the same process for our adult meals in order to avoid subsidizing adult meal prices. According by food nutrition services, we're not able to discount meal prices. This ask is to make that adjustment to avoid that subsidy. So we're asking for an increase of 27 cents for adult meal prices.
I move that we approve the change of the adult meal prices by the 27 cents.
Second?
Discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's approved.
All right, thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Matt.
you. Dr. Triphammer?
Good evening. It is the time of year where I try to review the district assessment plan. This is an annual requirement that I review this with the Board of Education. And I think you might have a copy of it in your packet. So it starts with policy IL1. That was, as you probably remember, that was just recently updated this past June. And there were really two pieces that were impacted with the update in the policy, and that was based on some recent guidance from DESE and some recent legislation. The first one is I'll call your attention to reading assessment. There's just a subtle shift. We were already testing all students kindergarten through third grade, specifically for dyslexia. It's more of a broad assessment now. The terminology is just a little bit more broad. It just says that the district will assess the reading level or reading readiness, you can read into that dyslexia, of all students enrolled in kindergarten through third grade, and using a state-approved reading assessment. And we also are required to assess any newly enrolled students in grades 1 through 5. Depending on how well kids do on those assessments, that could lead into what's now called a reading success plan. That's implemented primarily by our Title I reading teachers and our reading interventionists. So that was one slight difference in the policy. The other piece that was maybe a little more significant for us was language or guidance that we received from DESE that ended up in the policy regarding the end of course examination. So we had a little more leniency in years past where if a student, for instance, took Algebra 1 and maybe they weren't ready to take that end of course exam, we would allow them to take maybe Algebra 2 and then really make sure they were prepared for that end of course examination. We weren't the only ones. A lot of schools across the state were kind of doing that same testing because it really felt like that was in the interest of the child. But as DESE kind of gave us some more direct guidance, really what they said was students really do need to take that end of course exam at the end of that school year in which they're taking the class. The only caveat is if the child looks like they might be failing that class and they won't be receiving credit, they wouldn't have to take the EOC, but what they would have to do is retake that same class. And that's the subtle little difference. So the way the kind of the rules are now, kiddo takes Algebra 1 at the end of that year. They also take the EOC, kind of no questions asked. So that was and that also counts for our 8th graders, by the way, who are taking Algebra 1 in 8th grade. They also have to take the EOC. Of quirky little rule in Missouri. You would think, poof, they got their math EOC out of the way in 8th grade. It doesn't work that way. The way the graduate requirements are written, you have to take an EOC as a high school student, which for us, that's okay. They can take the Algebra 2, which is what most of our kids do. Believe it or not, though, there's an Algebra 2 and there's a Geometry and, of course, examination. And there are some kids in the state of Missouri that, believe it or not, finish all of those courses before 8th grade, or like in their 8th grade year. And so that kind of puts some districts behind the 8 ball in terms of trying to figure out, we are now out of end of course exams to get those students. I'm rambling on something that has nothing to do with us, but that's kind of the state of affairs with end of course exams. The other policy talks about test integrity and security. That has not changed. Just so you guys are aware, we take this stuff very seriously. Ann Bashi is our kind of boots on the ground testing director. So she'll meet with our counselors, who then in turn meet with all staff members who administer any standardized tests that we're following the rules. We follow their specific training that DESE provides. We do all the things that ensure proper testing. As a matter of fact, I may have shared this with the board. We were actually had a site visit last spring season of testing, and we had a gentleman from DESE observe our high school EOC, and was very complimentary of the high school and how they administered our EOC. So that was kudos to them. And then the next section really is the assessment calendar. It just kind of gives you an idea from fall to spring of the various assessments that are administered. There really were only 2 changes from previous years that I wanted to highlight. One is it's in kindergarten specifically. There is now a requirement from DESE that all school districts in Missouri give what's called a KEA. It's called a kindergarten entry assessment, and it's really designed to kind of measure, what is the state of our 5-year-olds coming into school? Are they truly ready for school? So our teachers examined there was 3 or 4 different assessments that our teachers could use as part of the KEA, and so they actually chose what's called the Kindergarten Observation Form, or KOF, and they are actually, some of them have already done that or are doing that right now. And what that looks like is the teacher fills out a questionnaire on a student. And so, whether or not they know their letters, do they know their numbers? So it's kind of a basic entry assessment to know whether or not, do we feel like our kiddos came into kindergarten with the skills that they needed to have. Now, that doesn't mean if the results reflect poorly on a student, doesn't mean they don't get to stay in kindergarten. But it does give us, it informs a little bit more in terms of what we can do with respect to providing interventions or additional support. So that is a new assessment this year. Again, it's called, the abbreviation is KOF. It stands for Kindergarten Observation Form. It's a form that is filled out on each student by each kindergarten teacher. The other new assessment package that we are putting in place this year, I've already spoke to the board about it, is an SEL screener called SABRS. We actually just did the first wave of that last Friday at our Curriculum Instruction and Assessment Day. And the SABRS is a 19-question SEL screen, a social emotional learning screener. And it is filled out by the teacher again. We kind of gave them time on the CIA day to kind of figure out how to do it and fill out all the questions on their kiddos. Happy to say and as a result of some other rules that are in place, we actually had to provide an opt-out for this assessment. We had four students in total in the whole entire district that the families chose to opt out, which is fine. But all that to be said, on all the remaining students, we have now baseline data on their social emotional well-being. And so the second half of that is called the MySavers assessment, and that starts in 2nd grade and goes all the way through 12th grade. And that's a student-completed survey, and they will fill out very similar questions. And all of those questions, I think we sent some information home a couple weeks ago that allows you to see all the questions. We're not hiding anything. You can actually Google Savers questions and it'll pop right up. But we felt like as our SEL committee dove into that, it would give us some just really basic baseline information on just checking in with our kids. And it's a piece that we have been wanting to do in our district for several years, and happy to say we're finally at that place. The end result will be doing this assessment in the fall and then comparing our results in the spring to see, we're hoping that we see a reduction in kids who are, labeled at risk or at some risk for, some social emotional behavior concerns. By virtue of our Tier 1 curriculum, K through 12, we're doing Leader and Me on the K-8 side. We've mentioned that the high school is embedding SEL lessons into their core curriculum. We have Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions that we're starting more in particular at the high school. We've been lucky enough to partner with SSD on a couple pieces that if kiddos are needing a little bit of a break or some time, we have a little place called the Thinkery where they can come and just kind of, for lack of a better term, decompress and just kind of let the air out a little bit. So we feel pretty good that we're putting some pieces in place to address the social emotional needs of our kids. And that's a really long story to say we use the SABRS assessment to measure that level of their social emotional well-being. The rest of the assessments here are ones that we've had for the last several years. And if you need a little brief explanation on all of them, I put a little glossary at the end that just gives a little bit of information on each of the various assessments. So that's what I have.
Can we get a motion to approve the assessment plan?
I move that we approve the assessment plan for the year 2023-2024.
Second?
All right, discussion?
On the kindergarten, is that something that you see us starting to use in parent as teachers to help the families that maybe don't go to early childhood centers? Is it a tool you think that they're going to use to help get kids ready, or be at a certain level when they get into kindergarten?
Well,
or?
we use a different, we use what's called the Brigance screening assessment in early childhood to do just that, to give us information on our incoming kindergartners, like, do we have some lagging skills that we need to kind of pay some attention to. The KOF, the Kindergarten Observation Form, is strictly for kids in kindergarten.
Pretty similar, though.
It really is, guys. I mean, we're just trying to see, do kids have a basic set of skills to be successful in the school?
Right. What'll be interesting, too, is on the KOF, over time, we'd like to track kids coming out of our early childhood center versus kids that haven't had that experience and look at that preparation.
Were any assessments removed from this list from last year, or everything's just,
Everything, everything's the
Nothing
same
was
except for the
removed.
addition of the KOF and SABRS.
okay, thank you. Great, any other questions for Dr. Triphammer? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The assessment plan is approved.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Dr. Hostetler for the next couple items.
Hello.
Hello.
Please pull up the PowerPoint. I'm not going to go through all the slides unless you all would like me to. I know there's quite a bit in there on our partnership agreement, so
It's good information.
it is. So I'm going to hit some of the highlights and some of the plans that we put in place here and some different things we've addressed.
You can quiz us though and make sure we've gone through them.
I am. I expect you to know
Yeah.
everything about special education
Ryan
law.
Fleming Carey.
Right. All right, thank you guys for having me tonight. So as you guys know, we're in partnership with Brentwood, and so the background and IDA and all those different aspects of it are in the document. Part of what we have to do in the state of Missouri is the state plan, and so that's a requirement for everybody within the state of Missouri. Because we are part of special school district, we have extra things that we get to do. There are certain things in the state regulations that only apply to schools in special school district. That would be St. Louis County and Scott County. Those are the only two in the state. And so part of that is this general, I like this better, so we're just gonna go here. So the IDA state statutes and regs are based off of federal law. Then you have the Missouri statutes and state regulations and standards and indicators. standards and indicators are what we use to identify students as a disability in the state of Missouri. So those are set forth by the state. Then there's a local compliance plan, which is what every school district in the state of Missouri says, this is how we're going to implement and make sure we're meeting our compliance standards. And we're reviewed on a 3-year rotating basis through a tiered system, and this year we are lucky enough to be under state review. So that's an ongoing process where we review everything. And then this part is what's special to special school districts and component districts, which is what we are here. And that would be a separate compliance plan for child fines. So we have an obligation, if there's a suspicion of a disability, to evaluate and determine if we need to move forward with the evaluation process. And then the procedural safeguards and least restrictive environments are things that are a little more specific to us because it's a dual system. And then additional resources, which we're going to approve, the partnership agreement, which is really just that agreement that this is what special school district's going to do and this is what Brentwood's going to do. And that's where Alex and I get to partner on a lot of those different things as those representatives from each districts, and then work together within those. Then you'll learn a little bit about the principal and coordinator collaboration tool. It's been an area of focus across the county. In Brentwood, we're unique as one of the smaller districts that is, I serve in both roles as a coordinator and director. So I support each principal, and so then with the principals I'll go through this tool, and then I also work at that district level with Alex, and then we work on the partnership agreement. So, any questions about that? All right, the whole purpose of this is to really make and work to make sure we're ensuring an inclusive environment and that everybody's on the same page and understanding and moving forward. The 7 categories, assessment, evaluation, we all agree to these things. Though all those that I just talked about, we all agree that we're going to commit to working cooperatively to implement those principles of the partnership agreement across the county. Alex and I actually were part of the revision of this 2 years ago. We sat in on a committee and helped revise the partnership agreement, and then the principals collaboration tool as well. They brought that in. And then through that partnership agreement, every year, this is who signs both the partner district and special school district agree to that. And our governing council member. And then our partnership ratings, you guys have that link to there as well. So from that partnership, from that ratings, I will say that from the start of 21-22, when Alex and I came into these roles, and then through the end of 2023, we've seen an increase in our scores across that with the partnership agreement. And then these are some of those action steps we've identified on areas to really focus in and work on. So it's kind of a blend of the building level and district level pieces. So part of that is ensuring representation and voice at the district and building level. So special education staff here in Brentwood follow the same expectation as Brentwood staff members. And so like on professional development days and anything like that, it's always, I get often, well, Sabrina, what is the special education staff doing? And I say, we're doing the exact same thing that Brentwood is doing. There are 2 days a year that I pull special education staff and work on very specific things for special education staff because we are still specialists and what we do is different. And then we found different ways throughout the school day to implement some of those more specific trainings that special education staff may need. In addition to, and I'll get to this a little bit later, but I'll say it now. In addition to providing additional training for our partner district general education teachers as well. So how do we really build that environment that is supportive of students regardless of the training or background or the district you work for? Because students are across all of Brentwood, and every student in the service is a Brentwood student. So the other piece is, and this has been a change, and this happened with Dr. Chambers as well, and it was very intentional, that general education and special education staff are on interview committees. So if we're hiring for a special education position, we have general education at the table. And if we're hiring for general education, we have special education. The first year was quite a lot of time for me sitting in interviews, but I do appreciate that because it is a different voice that comes to the table because we have different perspectives, backgrounds, and trainings. So bringing that and ensuring that our environments and through that hiring process is a part of that has been key to some shifts in some of the hiring practices. This is a fun one that Dr. Tripper-Ammer and I do. We meet bi-weekly to ensure communication and shared visions. So we've put together an elementary instructional leadership, and a secondary instructional leadership. So we meet with elementary principals, and then the instructional coach that special school district has assigned to our district, and then also our Kelsey Grammer when she's in town, when she's back, she's currently on maternity leave. And then we also do that at the secondary level, 6-12. And the idea behind that is to create a continuation of services for all students. So really talking about those instructional practices. We do a lot of conversations around MTSS during that time. It is ensuring that we as a leadership team at a building and district level are on the same page. And then we also have shared responsibilities of implementation of the MTSS processes. So that is a general education initiative. However, we do utilize and come to the table as part of that team to bring some of that background knowledge and understanding as well. And really looking at systematic procedures. So regardless of when you come into Brentwood or where you attend school in Brentwood, you have the same processes and procedures to ensure a high quality education. And then data-driven decision-making and implementation with fidelity.
What's MTSS stand for?
Multi-tiered system of supports. So the idea is with our reading interventionist, our math interventionist, our social and emotional supports, all of those things work within one system to support the whole child across environments.
Thank you.
Yes?
Should we wait for questions? Or
No, anytime.
So just back to that slide.
Now
the,
you're gonna test my ability to go backwards.
I know, testing my ability. So just the Brentwood partnership ratings, I apologize if you said this. Who does the ratings? That's based on who?
Alex and I sit down and we review the form.
Just the two of you, but we're getting feedback in terms of, from participants in it, parents of children with IEPs or no?
So a lot of those questions are what we have done with, within our systems. So after every IEP meeting, parents receive a rating questionnaire from special school district, and then special school district, in addition to the Brentwood surveys, also surveys parents on a regular basis, a few times a year.
Okay.
So a lot of that feedback comes from there. Historically, and in a lot of districts, we would work with our PAC, which is a parent advisory committee, and I will say in Brentwood, we actually don't have a PAC, and when I've talked to a lot of our special education parents, there hasn't been a desire to have a specific PAC. They participate more through PTOs and have that voice there, and then as needed, I meet with individual parents, or I would meet with a building set of parents as needed, but there's not been a desire for a building or district level PAC. And that's where a lot of some of those voices come from. The principal collaboration tool would also fall into this aspect, but it is also something that after we review it, we share it with cabinet and get feedback on it from them.
Is this, so the other question then is, if I look, it looks like we've improved year over year, which is great. Some of them were already exceeding. Do the categories and items within those, they evolve, they change based on you, or how does that work? Or is this a standard format and form that we are holding ourselves to?
This is a standard form.
Okay.
It was revised 21, 22, we implemented it. I believe that was, last year was the first year. 22, 23 was the new partnership agreement.
Okay.
And some of the areas where we needed the improvement was some of that representation pieces and some of the systems piece, so that would be that next area that we would see that improvement in.
So is it fair, I mean, there's some here that look like we need some improvement. We should expect to see then, we agree with this partnership agreement. Next year when you come back to us, we would expect that these are addressed?
Correct.
Okay.
That is our goal. And these action steps are based off of those areas
Okay.
that we identified as not being a 3. And we are brutally honest when we sit down and do
these are
this.
good.
Because we both looked at it and said, hey, we're new to this, we've got nothing to lose. Let's sit down and really identify where we are. There's a lot of professional development plans and different opportunities that we also are able to access and use. And we've brought several of those resources and tapped into those across the county. You're welcome. This is another piece that has been a really been important to me and part of my passion and what I do within my work, is developing and implementing training for Brentwood stakeholders on IDEA. I will say this has come up this year. This is one of those steps that I think we need to do for this upcoming year, which is building an understanding of the process, rights, and responsibilities to increase inclusion. So understanding IDEA, which is that federal law, and what that means within a community. And you'll also know that I co-champion the equity committee. So a lot of the work within the processes of equity fall within this, and fall special education students are, again, a protected class, but also really how do we truly engage and how we truly included within the community and opening up what that looks and feels like, and providing that voice. And really just a background of it. We've had a significant increase in students moving into Brentwood who come in with IEPs. This last year, actually, when we came in, 27% of the students who transferred into Brentwood came in with IEPs. So that was a pretty big increase, and from the end of the school year to the start of the school year, we had a 17% increase in students with IEPs based on that enrollment. So that has been a shift, and it was across the district that we had that impact. So that is causing questions from classroom teachers, from principals, and saying, hey, how can we better support students within our community? And so understanding all of those, again, that support on modifications and accommodations. What does that actually look like in a classroom instructionally? And providing some of those resources. So there's been some intentional planning on how to get some of those supports in place for teachers.
So did you say 17, so that 17% of our total student body have IEPs at this point?
No,
Okay.
that was the increase. We're at 15% right now in Brentwood.
Okay,
But we had a 17% increase from where we were
got it.
last year
Okay.
at the end of the school year. And then of the students who transferred in, 27%. So we had 52 transfer in and 14 came in with IEPs,
And the
which is not very common for us.
And it's 17%, are we finding some of the, I don't want to say problems, they're not problems. Are we finding some things and reaching out to parents and telling them, hey, I think that your child could, and are parents understanding now what an IEP is? Or,
It's a process. So that child find that I mentioned at the beginning, so part of that is anytime an educator or a parent suspects that there might be a disability, then that is a conversation. Here in Brentwood, with the ability to have all the interventionists and all those different aspects in place, we always put interventions in place. So part of the federal law and the state regs is that we intervene before we look at an IEP, because we want to make sure that it's not just from a lack of instruction. It could be that they didn't respond to a specific methodology or a way something was taught. So if we teach it a different way, does a student have it? If a student moved from another state, do we teach something in a different order in our curriculum? So they may have just not had exposure. So before we move to identifying a student as saying you have an educational disability, we want to make sure that it's not from a lack of instruction. That doesn't mean that people aren't doing their jobs. What that means is we want to make sure that we have taught a student in a way in which they learn, and if we have not, and there's an underlying disability, then we would do that. And so it is when parents make a referral, or if the school makes a referral, we meet and partner with them. We have a school psychologist assigned to us who does a lot of that initial conversation, counselors and principals, and then oftentimes I meet with families before they sign consent. They'll call and just have questions about the whole process. Because as you can imagine, if you get the call from school that your child's struggling, there's a lot of questions. What ifs? How does this work? How does this impact them long term? And then we do work with some families whose students have more significant disabilities, and that's an ongoing process of support, because it changes different aspects of how you plan for the future. And so a lot of that comes through that IEP process, and so we support students from birth through age 21, from school age, and special school district starts at age 3 through our early childhood program.
So just to clarify, maybe I'm getting a little bit confused. So a student that comes from a different district, a different state, they come into our district, we look at them, see how they perform, and then go through the process, or are they coming into, we already know that they have an IEP? Or
Some. So when a
Okay.
student enrolls in Brentwood, then the parent would mark that they have an IEP or 504. And if
And is
they
that the 17% that you were,
Yes.
okay.
that have an
Thank
IEP, yes. And so
Okay.
if they come in within the state of Missouri, and we do review all their paperwork. So we review and make sure that the evaluation report has all the required components of it, because some places don't always get the required components, or if they come in from out of state. So there are students that we might come in and we have to reevaluate, but yes.
Okay.
And then we take in their IEP, and then we implement it. We do comparable services until the IEP team can meet, and then we write the IEP for what that looks like here in
Here in
Brentwood.
Brentwood, okay, perfect, thank you.
using resources to increase support for students across environments. So one of the really cool things about here in Brentwood is 80% or more of the time is when our students are in general education, the higher percentage of our students. So 72% of our students who have IEPs are in the general education environment 80% or more of their day, which means that's where they're spending most of their time. That's called their least restrictive environment, and that's where we want kids. That's where all that rich content is coming from. And I will say that Brentwood is the only district in St. Louis County that our placement of our students with disabilities of color and our students, our white students, is the same amount of percentage in the gen ed setting. We're the only ones who are not skewed within that. So our students, regardless of race, are in the gen ed setting 80% or more of the time for 72% of our population. Plan communication. So building schedules, there's been a lot of changes in building schedules, specifically at middle and high, to ensure collaboration time and ways to support students. Release time for special education staff to participate in PLCs district-wide, so we have that voice there. And then communication plans with parents as needed. So some of our students require more intense communication plans. Sometimes it's through a period of time, but really those communication plans to ensure that teams are on the same page. Situations come up and we address them and move forward, and we try to always be as proactive as we can, but then as situations come up, we always try to make sure that everybody's on the same page moving forward.
If we have, because this follows kids to college, correct?
No.
The IEPs do not.
IEPs do not. So when a student graduates from high school, they receive a summary of performance, which says this is where they're ending their high school career. They can stay up until age 21 if it's appropriate and the IEP determines that. However, a student may go to college and need some accommodations as well, and typically those students would use what they had in high school and they would work with their college or university, and they would develop a 504 or a support plan there. So Section 504 does cover adulthood, but IDA is only covers students up to age 21.
Okay.
Principal collaboration tool, this is the purpose of that. It will be being rolled out. They just updated it recently. As we go through that, if you guys want feedback on it after we go through it, we can absolutely provide that to you. Really, it is to get everybody on the same page. The research has shown within the county, the relationship between the coordinators and the principals tend to be the most effective way of determining student success and also engagement at the building level. So it's really about fostering that positive work environment for staff and students. These are all of the things we just talked about when they're due. These are the by the numbers. I just got them, so they were not in your original. Kate very nicely put this in the presentation for me, and you all have them now. So this is what our numbers are this year. So 125 of our students in Brentwood receive services, special education services, and that's 15%. It has gone up from, I believe, 12% last year. And then we have 5 students who attend our SSD schools or sites, and that means that they would attend typically our sort of Litzinger or New Owner, depending on their age level. And then we have 9 students who are non-public, who go to our private schools, and they still come in and they access services through special school districts.
Trevina, is the national average still around 14%?
It is. So it will range, honestly, depending on the regions you are in the state. I was just at a state conference for directors of special education, and they were talking about there are places that it's about 17 or 18%, and there are places that it's below 10%. And so as this number, we would be considered higher than where we want to be, because ideally it's around 11 to 12%. But the state average, we're right around the state average right now. These are the SSD services, homebound, SNAP. You guys always sign an assurance document with homebound instructions, so if you have a student who does not have an IEP who needs it, you can still get it through a special school district. SNAP, which is anybody who's in a private or parochial school, you still have access, but you get a service plan instead of an IEP. It's a little less specific, and there's some limitations through that you don't have the same access that you do through an IEP. programs. So the detention and treatment centers, we service those as well. And then early childhood. So here in Brentwood, Special School District does provide the early childhood special education services. And we work with Kristen and BECC to do that. I do not supervise early childhood, it's its own funding source, but here in Brentwood, we all work together. And then South Tech, we do have 15 students who attend South Tech through 10 different programs, which has gone up.
Yes.
That was one of our goals as well.
What was it last year? 2?
6 or 7.
6 or 7, I can't remember if that was last year or the year before, but it has really increased where they're going. It's highly competitive also to get into South Tech and attend and complete. So.
It is rigorous.
For the early childhood special education, so those students that qualify, they do not pay tuition to come to the early childhood center for those
If
services.
for the time that they are in services, correct,
Mhm.
it is paid.
Right.
Yes. And so here is the breakdown of our disabilities. Our disability categories, these are what are set aside by the state. You will see that other health impairment and autism are pretty high, are our two highest. So 30% of our students are identified with other health impairment and 24% with autism. Two things that tells me looking at that, and then we also have speech impairment. And that could be somebody who has, speech impairment is articulation. Language impairment would be a more global disability, and that's part of the reason we put such an emphasis on working with our general education and special education staff, because those are considered more global disabilities, which means they're going to impact you in most aspects of your life. And so if you have a language impairment, then that means your language functioning is lower than what we would expect, and so when you're reading, you're writing, you're listening to directions, things need to be broken down differently. So if you're in a classroom that's going very quickly, that might be hard for you to keep up. And so how do we modify so you still get that rich content knowledge and move forward? So it's really finding all those different dynamics. And so a lot of language-based, based on those, if we're looking at, it's about 32% of our population have a language-based disability, and then other health impairment, a lot of students who fall under other health impairment through ADHD, so that would be executive functioning, and so that organization and how you take in information and process. So that also would impact you across multiple settings. For a specific learning disability, what everybody's typically used to for reading is, oh, I come out and I get taught really direct how to read, and then I catch and I close that gap. And so those are very different ways that we approach teaching. Any question on those? These are the definitions of the different disabilities that were just there, so you have access to those as well. And then any questions?
That was great. Tons of great information.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Do we need to, is there
Do we have to
action
approve?
required? Do we need to approve it or not?
We do. We need to agree, or we need to approve your agreement.
I move that we approve the SSD partnership agreement.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Is there anything on the assurance document, correct?
Yeah, we need action on that as well,
So
please.
that's the next one.
I move that we approve the assurance statement for 2023-2024.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is approved as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we're looking to take action on approving our board norms. These were stemmed out of a discussion out of the board retreat this summer, and then there's been a little more dialogue around those. So, you know, if we wanted to have any discussion about those.
I move that we approve the adoption of the board norms as outlined.
Second.
Discussion?
So are we had discussed, we'll take these and we'll also look to work with Tony to get them out on the site under the Board of Education or?
Yeah, we were just waiting on board
Okay.
approval to do so.
Excellent.
No, thank you for working on this
Yeah.
and putting it together for us. I think this is great. All right, any questions, discussion for board norms? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Tony can get those posted for us. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Then next up, we just had, we had completed our first read of all the policies, so we're looking for approval for the 4 policies, AC, BBBA, BBF, and EF.
I move that we approve the policies AC, BBBA, BBF, and EF.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those are approved. Okay, that moves us into the MSBA delegate report.
I guess I don't really have anything new to report. I assume that, well, the agenda for the delegate meeting will come out fairly soon. If there's anything of import, I'll try to pass that along. But I don't think I've seen it yet.
Okay.
And you're all still invited to come to the annual conference in Kansas City, which is edifying and entertaining. So,
Are you entertaining us while we're there?
Sure.
Hosting?
sure, whatever.
And just today,
Come and-
I shared out the dates on that's the St. Louis and St. Louis County Board of Education Council, I believe is what they call themselves. They've had a few meetings in the past that various board members and myself have attended. So that's a list of those meetings, and I think specifically their thought is they're going to really try to work around legislative advocacy for these meetings. So just I want to consider those. I believe that all except for one are going to be on Zoom. Is the way I read it.
Me too, yeah. I think they're monthly, and then December 2nd is in person at Ferguson Florissant. I've gone several times. It's really good collaborative work that districts do together. And this got started a few years ago, and we're much more powerful making decisions together as a unit. So if you have an opportunity to join the Zooms, I'm happy to see. I will see you on there. Okay, any committee updates from communications, curriculum?
We've got a meeting this Thursday, the communications committee does, so.
Great. All right.
It's not a committee, I can share that. I went to the 353 meeting tonight. They have to have the offers out to everyone in phase 1 in 2 days. They sent out 55 certified letters to all the owners, and 54 of them were received. So they had to make contact with everyone within 60 days, and the one that did not answer the letter is in phase 2, so they're not under any time constraint on that one. So he described the conversations as positive. So.
Great, thank you. All right, and just a few things on our calendar coming up. We have a communications workshop tomorrow night at 5 o'clock, board policy meeting on October 3rd. Do we know if the MSB Region 7 meeting is still taking reservations? Wants to go?
I don't know.
Okay, if anyone, I know Keith is planning on being there. I'm not sure I can make it, but if anyone wants to go, that is also very useful to go to those Region 7 meetings. And as Keith mentioned, the annual conference, as far as I know, it's just Brian, Keith Ravenberg, and I so far, but if we could get others to join, it's also worthwhile time.
Can I just say, if you all need to make lodging reservations, let me know.
Okay, thank you.
I think MSBA reserved rooms for me,
Okay.
so I think I'm all right. What?
He's probably in a special
Lucky to
hotel.
have
They
you.
didn't make them for me.
I'll stay in the suite with you.
I was like 2 miles away last time.
All right.
I move that we adjourn and move into closed session for the reasons stated in the agenda.
Second.
Great, if we could have roll call, please, Keith.
Jamie Allen?
Yes.
Ryan Dodson?
Yes.
Ryan Flynn?
Yes.
Keith Ravenberg?
Yes.
Keith Slusser?
Yes.
Lindsey Spencer?
Yes.
Gary Trust?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Were you all responsible? Did you all do the letters? Or no? Those
These
are really nice.
These are so nice.
They are very nice, and the handwriting's even nicer on top.
Yeah, I could read it, yes, it was very nice.
This is a lost.